The verdict of fear. The Celestial Council chamber hummed with the energy of 1,000 different species. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the center of the vast circular platform. Her worn diplomatic uniform a stark contrast to the shimmering robes and biosuits of the alien delegates surrounding her. The chamber itself defied human understanding of architecture, with walls that seemed to breathe and a ceiling that showed not the structure above, but the swirling cosmos itself. Sarah had been standing there for 17 hours. No chair had been offered, no water provided. It was a calculated insult, she knew, designed to remind humanity of their place in the galactic hierarchy. Or rather, their lack of one. The Prime Arbiter descended from the crystalline throne that floated above the assembly. Its form was difficult for human eyes to track, shifting between states of matter like a living aurora. When it spoke, the words came not through sound but directly into the minds of all present. Ambassador Chen of Earth and its colonies, the Arbiter's thoughts resonated with the weight of eons. The Celestial Council has deliberated on the matter of humanity's continued presence in civilized space. You have been permitted these final moments to speak before judgment is rendered. Sarah straightened her shoulders, feeling the weight of 8 billion humans across dozens of worlds resting on her words. She had prepared for this moment for months, ever since the incident at Kepler 442. But now, facing the assembled might of the galaxy's oldest civilizations, those carefully crafted arguments seemed as fragile as paper. Honored delegates, she began, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. Humanity comes before you not as supplicants, but as a species that has proven its worth through action, not ancient lineage. Yes, we are young by your standards. Yes, we make mistakes. But in our mere 3 centuries among the stars, we have shown something that many of you have forgotten in your millennia of comfort. We have shown the courage to grow. A ripple of discontent passed through the assembly. The Etherian delegate, a being of pure energy contained in a humanoid shell, pulsed an angry red. The Mechanarch Collective's 1,000 voices spoke in unison, their mechanical harmony filling the chamber with disapproval. The Arbiter raised what might have been an appendage, and silence returned. Ambassador Chen, this council is well aware of humanity's enthusiasm for growth. It is precisely this uncontrolled expansion that brings us here today. The incident at Kepler 442 cannot be ignored. Sarah felt her jaw clench. The Kepler 442 incident, that's what they called the unprovoked attack on a human mining colony by Zarathi raiders. 37 colonists dead, including children, and when the colonists fought back, when they dared to defend themselves and pursue the raiders to their base, suddenly humanity was the aggressor. The Kepler 442 incident, Sarah said, allowing an edge of steel to enter her voice, was self-defense. The Zarathi attacked first. They killed civilians. When we appealed to this council for justice, we were told to file forms and wait for bureaucratic review. My people chose survival over protocol. The Zarathi delegation, serpentine beings with scales that shifted color with their emotions, hissed in unified protest. Their senior speaker, decorated with ceremonial battle scars, slithered forward. The humans violated 17 sacred treaties. They brought weapons into neutral space. They destroyed a historic raiding ground that had existed for 10,000 years. A raiding ground used to attack peaceful colonies. Sarah shot back. Your historic tradition was built on the suffering of others. The chamber erupted. Dozens of species began speaking, thinking, and vibrating their opinions all at once. Through the chaos, Sarah caught fragments of the debate. The Altrurian peacekeepers spoke of humanity's dangerous militarism. The Void Merchants complained about human traders disrupting established monopolies. The Garden Worlds Alliance feared human terraforming technology would upset the natural order. But beneath all their complaints, Sarah heard the real message: fear. They were afraid of humanity because humans didn't fit into their perfectly ordered galaxy. Humans asked why, instead of accepting how things had always been, humans built new solutions instead of following ancient protocols. Humans survived where other young species would have been crushed by the weight of tradition. The Prime Arbiter restored order with a pulse of psychic energy that made Sarah's head ache. The testimony has been heard. The evidence has been examined. Now the Celestial Council will render its verdict. The lights in the chamber dimmed and each delegation's section began to glow with their vote. Red for exile, blue for probation, green for acquittal. Sarah watched as section after section turned red. The Etherians, red. The Mechanarch Collective, red. Even the usually neutral observers chose red. A few sections glowed blue, primarily the younger species who had traded with humanity. But green, not a single delegation chose full acquittal. Sarah's hand moved to the small device hidden in her sleeve. Director Marcus Webb of Human Intelligence had given it to her before she left Earth. "If things go badly," he had said, "activate this. It will scan everything. Every system, every weakness, every secret they don't want us to know. We'll need that information for what comes next." She activated it with a subtle press. The device was undetectable by their sensors, a product of human ingenuity they couldn't imagine, because they'd never needed to hide from a hostile galaxy. The Arbiter's form solidified into something almost humanoid, as if to deliver the verdict in a way humanity could fully understand. By a count of 347 to 23 with 12 abstentions, the Celestial Council finds humanity guilty of aggressive expansion, violation of established protocols, and fundamental incompatibility with galactic civilization. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Sarah remained standing, her face betraying nothing of the storm inside her. "The sentence," the Arbiter continued, "is complete exile from all Council space. Humanity has 60 standard days to evacuate all settlements, stations, and vessels from the inner spiral. After this period, any human presence in Council space will be met with immediate termination. All trade agreements are void. All diplomatic protections are withdrawn. All shared technology must be returned or destroyed. 60 days to move billions of people. 60 days to abandon everything humanity had built." It was impossible, and they knew it. This wasn't just exile. It was designed to break humanity, to scatter them to the cosmic winds where they would fade into extinction like so many other troublesome species before them. Furthermore, the Arbiter added, and Sarah heard what might have been satisfaction in its psychic voice,
"Humanity is forbidden from accessing the hyperspace network.
You will travel by conventional means only." That drew gasps even from some council members. Without the network, journey between stars would take years instead of days. It was a death sentence for interstellar civilization. Sarah stood silent for a long moment, letting them think she was crushed by the verdict. Then she smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. "You think you're protecting your perfect order?" she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "You think by casting us out, you'll return to your comfortable stagnation. But you've just made the greatest mistake in galactic history." The Arbiter's form flickered with surprise. "You dare threaten the Council?" "No," Sarah replied calmly. "I'm giving you a history lesson. Every time humanity has been told we cannot do something, we find a way. Every time we're pushed to the edge, we come back stronger. You're not exiling us. You're freeing us. Free from your ancient rules, your suffocating traditions, your fear of change." She turned slowly, addressing the entire assembly. "We accept your judgment. Humanity will leave your space. But remember this moment. Remember that you had the chance to grow alongside us and you chose fear instead. When we return, and we will return, it won't be as supplicants begging for acceptance. It will be as equals who built something better than what you offered." The scanner in her sleeve had finished its work. 60 days would be enough. Director Webb and the Emergency Council had been preparing for this possibility since the first signs of Council hostility. Ships were already being retrofitted. The secret colonies beyond Council space were ready. And most importantly, the breakthrough that Dr. Yuki Tanaka had made in alternate FTL travel, the discovery the Council knew nothing about, would change everything. As Sarah was escorted from the chamber by Council security, she passed the viewing gallery where the small human delegation waited. She gave them the slightest nod. They understood. Operation Exodus was beginning. The Council delegates began to disperse, satisfied that they had dealt with the human problem. They didn't notice the human observers carefully documenting every face, every species, every potential weakness. They didn't know that humanity had been preparing for this moment. Not just as a possibility, but as an opportunity. The Arbiter remained in the empty chamber long after everyone had left, its form troubled by something it couldn't quite identify in the human ambassador's final words. Not a threat, but a promise, and for the first time in its ancient existence, it wondered if the Council had just made an enemy they couldn't afford. The rise beyond stars 3 years had passed since the exile, and the galaxy had largely forgotten about humanity. The Celestial Council congratulated themselves on avoiding a crisis. and life in the inner spiral continued its predictable patterns. Trade routes that had been disrupted by human merchants were reclaimed by traditional powers. Worlds that had begun adopting human innovations reverted to conventional methods. The galaxy spun on, comfortable in its ancient rhythm. They had no idea what was building in the darkness beyond their borders. Admiral Marcus Webb, formerly Director of Human Intelligence, now Supreme Commander of the Free Human Coalition, stood on the observation deck of the Prometheus station. It wasn't built with Council technology or following Council specifications. It was purely human, a massive structure that would have been impossible using the technology they'd been permitted to have in Council space. Before him stretched the Nexus, humanity's greatest discovery and most closely guarded secret. It wasn't the hyperspace network that the Council controlled. It was something far more profound, a web of quantum tunnels that existed in parallel to normal space-time. Dr. Tanaka had discovered them by accident while trying to find a way around the Council's FTL restrictions. What she found instead was a highway system that predated the Council itself. Admiral, Captain Diana Ross approached with a datapad. The 7th city ship just arrived from the Perseus Arm. That brings our total population in the free zones to 4.2 billion. Webb nodded, his eyes never leaving the swirling portal of the nearest Nexus gate. And our new allies? The Forgotten are sending another fleet. The Karathi remnants have agreed to share their manufacturing techniques. And sir? Ross paused, a smile breaking across her usually serious face. The Zelathi just sent word. They want in. The Zelathi, an ancient species that had withdrawn from Council space millennia ago, disgusted by the stagnation and politics. They'd been watching humanity from afar, waiting to see if these newcomers were different. Apparently they'd seen enough. In 3 years, humanity had built something the Council claimed was impossible. A thriving interstellar civilization without their network, their rules, or their approval. But more than that, they'd found others. The forgotten races, species that had been exiled, withdrew, or simply existed beyond the Council's reach. Each carried grievances against the established order. Each had capabilities the Council either feared or didn't know existed. Webb turned as another figure entered the observation deck. Ambassador Sarah Chen, now wearing the black and silver uniform of the Coalition Diplomatic Corps, carried herself with a confidence that had been hard-won in the years since the trial. "Sarah," Webb greeted her. "How did the negotiations go?" "The synthetics are considering our proposal," she reported. "They're interested in our stance on AI rights. Apparently, treating artificial intelligence as equals rather than tools is a novel concept in this galaxy. Novel enough to bring them to our side? I believe so. They've been hiding in dark space for centuries, afraid the Council would dismantle them as dangerous technology. Our acceptance might be enough to tip the scales." Webb smiled grimly. Every ally they gained was a testament to the Council's failures, species driven away by fear, prejudice, or simple narrow-mindedness. Humanity had become a rallying point for every civilization that didn't fit the Council's rigid definitions of acceptable. An alert chimed on Ross's pad. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from Deep Scout 7. They've found something." The main screen flickered to life, showing Captain Jake Martinez aboard a sleek reconnaissance vessel. Behind him, through the viewport, loomed something that made everyone on the deck stop breathing. It was a ship, but calling it that was like calling a mountain a rock. The vessel stretched for kilometers, its hull a mix of organic curves and crystalline structures that hurt to look at directly. It was ancient, older than the Council, older than recorded history. "Admiral," Martinez reported, his voice filled with awe. "We've found a predecessor ship. It's dormant but intact. The Forgotten were right, sir. The predecessors didn't die out. They evolved beyond physical space. And, sir," he paused, "they left instructions. In every language, including ones that don't exist yet. But the human version is highlighted." Webb felt his heart racing. The predecessors. The mythical first civilization that even the Council spoke of only in whispers. "What do the instructions say, Captain?" Martinez looked directly at the camera. "For those who dare to grow beyond the cage of stars, we leave our tools. Build better than we did." The observation deck erupted in excited chatter, but Webb raised his hand for silence. This changed everything. With predecessor technology, humanity wouldn't just match the Council. They'd surpass them entirely. "Admiral, Chen said quietly. The Council will panic when they learn about this. They might even consider it an act of war. Let them, Webb replied. We're not the same species they exiled 3 years ago. We've grown, adapted, become something they never expected. He turned to Ross. Send word to all Coalition members. Begin Phase 3 of the Ascension Protocol. Across the free zones, the message spread. Hidden shipyards increased production. Scientists began integrating predecessor technology with human innovation and ally contributions. The Coalition fleet, already impressive, began to transform into something that defied conventional understanding. But it wasn't military might that would be humanity's greatest triumph. It was what they'd built culturally. In Council space, species remained separate, bound by ancient suspicions and hierarchies. In the free zones, humanity had created something unprecedented, true integration. Human children learned alongside young Karathi. Zilathi elders taught human students philosophies that predated the Council. Synthetic minds worked with organic ones to solve problems neither could handle alone. 6 months later, the Council received their first shock. A trade ship from the outer territories brought reports of massive energy signatures beyond their borders, impossible structures being built. Ships that didn't match any known configuration, and most disturbing of all, Council species requesting permission to visit these mysterious free zones. The Prime Arbiter called an emergency session. For the first time in centuries, fear rippled through the ancient assembly. The humans hadn't disappeared. They hadn't scattered and died as expected. They had built something new. We must investigate, the Etherian delegate insisted, its energy form flickering with agitation. If the humans have violated the exile terms, how? The Mechanarch Collective interrupted. They're beyond our space as we demanded. We have no authority there. It was the Zarathi speaker who voiced what they all feared. What if they come back? What if they've found allies? What if they're stronger? The debate raged for days, but ultimately, they decided to send a scout fleet to observe. What they found shattered their comfortable worldview. The human coalition didn't just occupy a few systems. They controlled an entire region of space the Council had deemed uninhabitable. Massive stations floated at Lagrange points that shouldn't exist. Ships moved through space in ways that violated Council understanding of physics. And the diversity, the sheer variety of species cooperating, made the Council's segregated sections look primitive. But the greatest shock came when the scout fleet was approached by a coalition patrol. The ships were beyond anything in Council databases, seamless mergers of a dozen different technologies. The transmission they received was in perfect Council standard, delivered by none other than Sarah Chen. Greetings, Council Scouts. You are approaching Coalition space. You're welcome to observe, but please maintain a respectful distance. We wouldn't want any misunderstandings. The lead scout captain, a veteran Altrurian, responded carefully. Ambassador Chen, the Council requires an explanation. This buildup of military forces threatens galactic stability. Sarah's image smiled on their screens. Military forces? Captain, these are cargo ships and science vessels. We're building a civilization, not an army. Though I understand how the Council might not recognize the difference. You've always confused strength with aggression, growth with threat. The Council can demand nothing here. Sarah interrupted gently. You exiled us, remember? Cast us out of your perfect order. We've simply built our own, one based on cooperation instead of hierarchy, innovation instead of tradition, hope instead of fear. The transmission included a data packet, a formal invitation. The Coalition would be hosting a gathering in one standard month. Any species, including Council members, were welcome to attend as observers, to see what humanity and their allies had built. The scout fleet returned with their report and the Council fell into chaos. Some demanded immediate military action, others urged caution. A few quietly wondered if perhaps they had been wrong. The gathering, when it came, was attended by representatives from every corner of the galaxy. Even Council members came, officially as observers, unofficially as spies. What they found defied every prediction. The venue was Cathedral Station, a structure that shouldn't exist. It combined predecessor technology with human engineering, Zilathi aesthetics with synthetic efficiency. It was art and function in perfect harmony. The station could house millions, with sectors adapted for every known type of life form, and some that hadn't been seen before. Admiral Webb gave the opening address, standing before an assembly far more diverse than the Council had ever achieved. 3 years ago, humanity was judged incompatible with galactic civilization. Today, we stand here not to dispute that judgment, but to thank you for it. In exile, we found freedom. In isolation, we found unity. In rejection, we found our true family. He gestured to the assembled crowd, human and alien, standing together. We don't seek to rejoin the council. We don't seek revenge or validation. We seek to build something better, a future where young species aren't crushed by ancient rules, where innovation isn't feared but celebrated, where strength isn't measured by how well you fit the mold, but by how willing you are to break it. The predecessor ship had been activated and now served as a mobile embassy, traveling between coalition and council space. Its very existence proved that the council's version of history, their claim to be the pinnacle of galactic civilization, was a comfortable lie. There had been others before, others who had grown beyond the need for such rigid structures. As the gathering continued, council observers noted something that disturbed them more than any military threat could have. Young members of their own species were asking questions. Why couldn't they have human-style education systems? Why were AI treated as property rather than partners? Why did tradition matter more than progress? The council had exiled humanity to protect their order. Instead, they had created their own competition, a competing vision of what galactic civilization could be. In the end, it wasn't war that changed the galaxy. It was choice. When species were given the option between the council's rigid hierarchy and the coalition's dynamic federation, more and more chose freedom. The council couldn't stop it without becoming the very tyrants they claimed not to be. 5 years after the exile, the Prime Arbiter sent a private message to Sarah Chen. It was short, almost humble. Perhaps we were wrong. Is there room for dialogue? Sarah's response was equally brief. There was always room for dialogue. You just had to stop being afraid of change. The galaxy would never be the same. The exile of humanity hadn't been an ending, but a beginning. The council still existed, but now it was one voice among many, rather than the only voice that mattered. And humanity, the species they had tried to cast out, had become the bridge between the old and the new. In trying to cage humanity, the council had instead set them free to soar, and in soaring they had lifted others with them. The empire humanity built wasn't one of conquest or domination. It was one of possibility, where every species could reach for something greater than what they were told to be. The stars, it turned out, were big enough for everyone's dreams.